Check.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll just stand for now. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this event. This is going to be an event that is organized by MENA Youth Network about overdependence on food imports and the future of food security in the MENA region. I'll give it off to my colleague, Mohammed.
Yes, so my name is Mohammed Ahmadi. I'm the co-founder and communications director of the MENA Youth Network.
And I'm Reem Al Safar. I am co-founder and executive director of MENA Youth Network.
Founded by MENA country delegates to the UN pre-COP26 Youth for Climate Conference in 2021 in Italy, the MENA Youth Network aims to amplify the diversified voices of young people from the MENA region, encourage region-wide projects and collaborations, and increase climate change awareness amongst MENA youth and the general public.
And so MENA Youth Network is actually an official partner of the World Food Forum. And in the past few months, we have been doing MENA Youth consultations on agri-food systems transformations in partnership with the World Food Forum and in support with the FAO. And we have actually had a live session at the FAO HQ last month to finalize the consultations, to have a final draft and policy priorities, 5 policy priorities for our region from the youth on what they think should be prioritized in agri-food systems transformations in our region.
Yes, so getting into the panel discussion, just some background. So the MENA region is one of the most food insecure and water scarce regions in the world, but it's also one of the most dependent regions on external food and crop imports. And this may keep it at a major disadvantage in case the major exporters were to decrease or halt their supply. And we've seen that happen with the war in Ukraine, for example. So now today we will be exploring relevant issues by putting forward plausible future scenarios and possible solutions that can be implemented. And Reem can introduce our speakers now.
All right, then I will be taking a seat here. Thank you all for joining us. For introductions, we have Dr. Federico Pontoni. He is the program director at FEAM and research fellow at GREEN, the Research Center on Geography, Resources, Energy, and Environment of Bocconi University, where he teaches energy economics and ocean management. He's also a member of the Senior Energy Advisory Program of the Tony Blair Institute, funded by Power Africa. Next, we have Dr. Hiba Al-Hariri. Hiba Al-Hariri, she's a water scarcity advisor at the FAO Regional Office for the Near East and North Africa. Hiba has spent the last 3 years as a water advisor with the FAO R&E Water Scarcity Initiative team. Hiba has over 15 years of international experience in international, regional, and national projects in Canada and the MENA region. Hydrogeology, disaster risk reduction, integrated water resources management are among her areas of expertise. Hiba previously served as AWC's Deputy Technical Director and co-chaired UNDRR, Gender Equality and Women Empowerment Group, GEWE. In 2020, Hiba led the implementation of a regional initiative on building back better from COVID-19 in the Arab states with UNDRR ROAS. She is currently leading FAO Interregional Technical Platform on Water Scarcity at FAO R&E. And then finally, but last but not least, we have Mr. Omar Farhati. And he's the former president of IAAS, the International Association of Students in Agricultural and Related Sciences, and current head of the Food and Agriculture Youth Institute. Omar Farhati is a Moroccan plant health scientist holding an agricultural engineering degree. He is a current double master student in Spain and France in 2020-2021. He was the president of IAAS World, where he pioneered the network's involvement in the global climate change policy, as well as the food and agricultural policy. He currently leads the Food and Agriculture Youth Institute of IAAS World, aiming at involving young people in the food systems policy space and debate. Thank you all for joining us, and we are honored to have you here. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we have people here from different walks of life, different perspectives, And we have students, we have scientists, and we have a person from a UN entity. So this is what we hope there is some kind of organic conversation in this event. So to start off, we would like to get some background information on the MENA region's overdependence on food imports and its causes and effects, both in terms of society, economy, and the environment. Do any of you have any specific thoughts on that? Hiba, would you like to start?
Thank you very much, Reem. First, I would like to say that can you hear me clearly? Actually, not very clear. Okay. Yeah, it's okay. Okay. So I'm actually very delighted to be here with you and to discuss this very interesting topic. And maybe before I start, I just would like to say that the main key message for FAO at COP27 is actually agri-food systems in the center of solutions for climate change. So we are here also to advocate on the importance of the transformation of agri-food systems. So with respect to the interdependencies of the MENA region, maybe I would just come up with some general figures to give us a sense on the scale of challenge that we have. Several reports actually reported that the agriculture and food imports in the MENA region between 2015 and 2018 exceeded in some cases around 150 million US dollars. We can see that also several countries in the MENA region depends on their agriculture and food imports to a percentage that exceeds in sometimes 14%. For specific crops, for example, in Egypt, we rely on the wheat imports. In Egypt, it exceeds around 85%. In countries like Tunisia, it's the imports of also wheat crops exceeds 50%. So we can certainly see that there are specific crops that can be a little bit challenging, and we can see that some countries need maybe to deal with some food security challenges when it comes to specific crops in order to secure the affordability and the also the access to specific goods and commodities.
Thank you very much, Hiba, for this background information. So you mentioned so many topics that we want to touch upon, actually. Water scarcity, accessibility to healthy, nutritious foods, the food systems themselves being sustainable enough to sustain this much of a regional population. And so, do you think in the next 10 or 20 years, what do you see as happening in the future?
Well, let me just begin by saying that during the last couple of years, I believe we went through several global crises from the conversion of climate change and also from the pandemic and what we can see right now, or what we are witnessing right now, also from the instability and the conflict in some areas. So I believe all these global crises actually demonstrated that the global systems has been stretched to very thin limits, and they were not maybe resilient enough to cope and to face midterm and long-term challenges. So I believe in the upcoming years, we will need to rethink about several strategies and systems that we have been dealing with and maybe promoting in the past, and to focus on not only having some economical factors as the main drivers for the decision-making process, because I think the experience shows that there were actually several geopolitical also conditions that can affect the situation. And particularly when it comes to food insecurity, the vulnerable communities are the most affected ones, and in the least developed countries and the rural areas, they are the ones who usually suffer when it comes to any national or regional crisis.
And so to take that and to jump to the scientific part of it, Federico, to you, do you have any from your experience in science, in research, what have you seen being implemented, and what do you think could be implemented in the MENA region?
So, well, first of all, let me say that I'm very happy and honored to be here and discussing this very important topic with you. And I really like the title, and I want to stress the first word, which is overdependence. This is because the war between Russia and Ukraine has created tensions, given the fact that the two countries are major suppliers of energy and food. And according to your overdependence, for instance, Europe overdependence in energy, now we are discussing about energy security and self-sufficiency. And of course, in other regions, such as the Middle East and North Africa, the main issue is overdependence on food imports, and therefore the priority becomes food security. And what we need to bear in mind at the same time is that countries and regions have different resource endowments, okay? And while we think about security and we think about sufficiency, we have to bear in mind that there are limits in terms of water availability, land availability, and that apart from some continental countries, okay, it is very difficult for any small country to achieve sustainability. And it doesn't even make sense, okay, because you can be exporter of a good and then importer of a good, and the interdependencies per se are not bad. So the problem is not being importing, but over-importing and over-relying, okay? And when it comes to the scientific aspect of it, what we see is that for water management, okay, you have incredible solutions that could reduce even by 90% the amount of water that you need for for growing crops, for managing more in general agricultural produce. And of course, it is possible to increase the yield with satellite imagery, with apps, and you see that all these new technologies and all this new way of managing resources and production are already there and already in place. Now there is an important step to do, and this is something that I would like to discuss with you. Okay, so rather than saying something, but like listening to something, is that I think that my experience in let's say North Africa in particular, but also in the Middle East, when it comes to agriculture, is that it is not yet perceived as a sector that requires high human skills, and that is a sector that is a sector of the future and not of the past, okay? That you have to combine some traditional aspects with innovation, with human capital, with high skills. So it's a sector that today requires more PhDs, okay, than unskilled labor, particularly if you want to increase yields, increase efficiency, reduce carbon footprint. At the same time, acknowledging the fact that the region will still be a net importer. And because of the fact that the region will still be a net importer, and it will be a net importer because some physical constraints cannot be overcome. So water is one of that, the land is one of that. Climate change will even have a higher pressure on both land availability and water availability. Still, you can set up strategies, okay, to, while being dependent, keeping the flow of food stable, because you diversify your portfolio of suppliers, and because you create with other sectors, for instance, the energy sector, the cash reserves that you need to have the strong currencies to buy food on the world market. So there are plenty of things to do, but from a scientific point of view, I would say that the first aspect is not only to know that there are new technologies and new way of managing both resources and the agricultural production, but understanding that the agriculture of this century is high tech, high skill, and requires like a new approach from the youth, that they don't have, from young generations, that they don't have to run away from the agricultural sector, okay, but they have to see it as something very important for the future, because it is a cool sector.
Thank you very much. And so many valuable points that were added. But the one that I wanna that really stood out to me is technology. So we want technology. We want more. We want agri-tech. And the only problem is that majority of rural people cannot afford this. Rural people in rural areas, who are the people who usually do the agriculture, who are the farmers, cannot afford this agri-tech. And so how do we provide the finance without putting them in a position of disadvantage where they are at the mercy of the company or the corporation or the government that is supplying the finance? Amr, would you like to touch upon that subject?
Yeah, but hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me and to be a young person here speaking on this panel. But before talking about finance, I think it's interesting and important to set a bit more the scene on food security in the MENA region and water scarcity. I don't know if you know, but MENA region's population is 6% of the world's population. And if you check food security and food insecurity numbers, especially 20% is the share of the world's population that is food insecure. It is in MENA region. So 20% of the whole world's population that is insecure is in MENA region, and it only holds 6%. And I think this is an alarming number that we all need to be aware of. The second thing is we've talked about geopolitics and about imports and about war. In Yemen, for example, 23 million, people in Yemen are undernourished, which is 83% of the whole population. It's really important to also share with the audience the numbers to showcase why is it important to join this session in the first place. And since we're in the climate conference, climate change is increasing. The effects of climate change is highly increasing in the MENA region, with unpredictable rain patterns, increasing temperatures and droughts. And if climate change mitigation, but especially adaptation measures in the MENA region are not taken, the consequences will be irreversible. So coming back to your question, finance, technology, and several other aspects need to be taken into account. But the most important thing, since I'm a young person, farms are becoming more and more empty with generations. And we need to make agriculture look more attractive to young people. But how can we do that? How can we make agriculture look more attractive to young people? First of all, the previous speaker spoke about technology, using technology, and we need to address and find ways, different ways to attract young people into agriculture using technology, remote sensing, satellite imaging, and all sorts of things. That's the first thing. The second thing is to support peer-to-peer learning. I think it's important because seeing is believing. And if young people see among each other what best practices are out there, what mechanisms are out there, this will help support and bring attraction among young people. This is another option, but I think the other experts here have other views on this. And when we talk about finance, there needs to be several and more finance mechanisms and schemes to support the implementation of businesses in rural communities from young people, as well as different, how do we say that? like capacity building programs from the FAO. We've seen so many of them, and through EAS or from other network organizations like MENA Youth Network, several opportunities should be taken into account and help young people build up the best skills possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omar. Can you hear me? Hello. Okay. So basically, thank you so much, Omar, for adding the youth perspective and also the perspective of the MENA region. I want to know if any of you, Hiba or Federico, have any thoughts on that. Yes, Hiba.
Can you? Can I try this one? Okay, sorry. Yeah, I just want to maybe before we continue in the discussion, I just want to highlight that when we speak about food security, we always focus on the production side. But I think this is working fine. You can't hear me?
Hello?
Oh, I think it's
This one is what?
It's working.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to say that when we speak about food security, we always focus on the production side and that we need to increase the production. But actually, the agri-food systems is not only concerned with the production. We need to also look at the process. We need also to look at the distribution, and this is where issues like supply chain has been impacted, and we've seen the impacts during the several global crises, including the pandemic, which was shocking in some cases, and also the consuming part as well. We need also to look at the food waste, to look at what type of food we are consuming, which is actually affecting also what type of diets the MENA region is actually following, and to ensure that we have proper advocacy as well on those elements. So increasing the production is a good thing, but we're not going to be able to achieve food security actually without looking also at the other elements as well, because the production is not enough. So maybe just building on what Omar was saying, and maybe to speak about a little bit the water scarcity element as well. Maybe just to, I just wanted to highlight that on the 11th of November, FAO at the COP will be launching its State of Land and Water report for the MENA region. So the State of Land and Water report, generally it's a global report, but this year we have a special iteration for the MENA region that shows lots of statistics on our water resources, our land degradation status in the MENA region, and other aspects, and soil as well. So you're all welcome to join this launch. It's on the 11th of November at the Food Pavilion. So the finding of this report shows that, for example, the fresh water availability as well per capita in our region has been declining from the 60s to around 2008, with around 78%, which is actually higher than the global figure, which is around 60%. Some countries, including the GCC countries, also showed a decline with more than 80% in their freshwater resources per capita share. Also, the land degradation was very significant in the results of this report. So we have been seeing alarming figures and maps for soil salinity, soil erosion, and also, of course, groundwater pollution is one of the major challenges. But generally for land degradation, the estimated costs for the land degradation in our region between 2000 and 2015 was around $9 billion per year. So this is also a very alarming figure. And if we are speaking about increasing the production while we have also land degradation and land issues and soil erosion, this is not going to be possible unless serious considerations are also being, taken towards the land management and the soil restoration in order to be able to produce.
And so are you saying we need to tackle this also from a government perspective, from a management perspective of these resources? And how do we Can you hear me? Yeah. And how do we do that? So is it international platforms or organizations like the UN reaching out to governments to raise awareness about this and to make sure that they manage their resources correctly? Or is there a different way of doing it?
Well, generally, the report recommends, and also, of course, this has been also a message that FAO has been advocating for. The solution requires a kind of a multi-partner solution. So we need to have inclusive governance, actually, in order to be able to restore the land and also restore the soil. So it's a combination of the efforts of the government, but also we need to look also at the end users and the stakeholders, the farmers, and to include them in the decision-making process, in the practices that can help them, not only with the use of technologies, but also trying to apply some of the indigenous knowledge, for example, and bring it back, and also maybe update it a little bit, document it properly, because you will be surprised that over the years, there was a wealth of indigenous knowledge, and people have been coping with water also scarcity in different ways, and these practices needs to be brought back again, and to see how we can utilize that. This is on the maybe management aspects and some of the governance aspects as well, but we need also to look at different policies. For example, to date, the virtual water is not being calculated properly when it comes to food imports. So the amount of water that is being utilized to produce specific crops is not being properly calculated, and this is a very important element that needs to be also taken into consideration while calculating and doing several statistics on food imports, to look at the value of water that is being utilized also in these imports. There are also several solutions on the management level. For example, the water accounting approaches and techniques. These are basically looking at innovative approaches to not away from the conventional what we call management systems. So the water accounting, basically you look at the different sectors, and you look at the consumption and the utilization and what we call the return flows of return flows. So it gives you a better understanding how the water is being utilized, how the products are being economically evaluated, so you can optimize your decision-making process based on a really proper holistic approach, where you are looking at the big picture, not only at specific maybe case by case or specific context. All these elements, I think, needs to be taken into consideration.
Thank you very much for all the statistics. So much information that I'm trying to take in at the moment. But one thing that you mentioned was including the indigenous knowledge, which is very important. But many people are also very confused and conflicted when they hear technology and then indigenous knowledge. Are they mutually exclusive? Can you bring them together?
No, they are not. So when I was talking about technology, and of course I cited satellite imagery and drop irrigation, and then other things that they look more technological in the sense of what we normally think of when we talk about technologies. But in reality, the word technology and the meaning of it is like finding the appropriate tools that work in that specific environment. And there is traditional knowledge, which is in the end is technology, okay? And I was really struck discussing with this professor that has been developing anew the traditional technologies and traditional ways of harvesting water in the desert, okay? And basically he did it in Algeria first, and then in Egypt, and now he's doing it in the GCC. Is showing that taking the traditional knowledge and adding new knowledge, you can bring back to life oases in many areas of the desert, therefore at a very low cost, therefore reducing the need for people to migrate, and this relates also to financing, because I think that the Oasis are the perfect example of it. A functioning Oasis able where you with the traditional technology, let's say, that of course you can then modernize, but with the traditional technology and with the traditional materials, but with improved the knowledge that we have, you can harvest water and you can produce, of course, then agricultural products. But there is a very important aspect to it, is that you need cooperation. You need a village, a system of more than one village that cooperates. And in the end, when we talk about modern agriculture, we don't have to think only about big agrotech industries. Okay. For instance, in Europe, in many countries in Europe, modern agricultural production was not brought about by big companies, but rather by cooperatives. Okay, and cooperatives were able to solve the access to finance for single farmers. They were able to create a land management system, which was a land management system from bottom up rather than top down. And many traditional technologies that can then be improved with modern knowledge are based on this idea of cooperation. And I think that they are very best suited also for solving some access to finance, because you can de-risk any kind of investment through a cooperative agreement. And so therefore this is something that we need to explore further, and it is something that in the region is already present because of the traditional technologies that were based on a common effort and a communitary effort, let's say.
Thank you so much. And that already touches upon our next question that I want to direct to Amar. So what changes? So we talked about technology, we talked about finance and indigenous knowledge and how to integrate all these together. But so in your perspective, what changes can be made in agri-food system practices to better prepare the MENA region for the impacts of the climate crisis and other large-scale events? So how important are each of these solutions or strategies compared to one another?
Thank you very much for that question. So what changes can we do, and what changes do we foresee as young people? I think we need to build up the skills of young people. I speak as a young person, and I think that there is a need to build up their advocacy skills. Young people can be innovators. They can also come up with creative solutions, and we need to learn from what they are able to do. Young people can also be advocates, and then we need to focus on this area because they can look at the needs of their local communities, and they can together drive resilience and social change. So there is a whole and global need to focus on young people and their potential to bring in solutions for the food, agriculture, and climate change policy. And how can we do that as young people? I was also saying that in another panel, which was about the role of young people in climate change and food policy. And I think that this can be done through consultative processes of young people. I would say that if there are any young people here, just collaborate with each other, join each other's networks, and create consultations regarding food security in your region, regarding agriculture, climate change, and any other topic, and foresee and check what issues you would like to solve, which actors are linked to those issues. We need to hold people accountable for everything, and then what actions do we call for? And then we need to merge everything all together and bring it into position papers, into policy documents, and we need to defend them together as young people. And I think this is the way forward. We need to all foresee, and the change we can all implement together.
Thank you very much, Amar. And I love all the messages being sent here and all the knowledge being exchanged. But I want to go back, just reel back a little bit to a point, and this was actually the reason, one of the reasons why we thought this topic was so relevant right now. And Dr. Federico mentioned the war in Ukraine, and how it might impact our over dependence. So we are over dependent. So how do you think, how has the MENA region been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and war in Ukraine in terms of agri-food systems? Whether any of you would like to touch on that, Hiba, maybe, if there's from the FAO's perspective.
Well, maybe just like a general comment, not specifically maybe to the war, because I believe this is not the only challenge that we are facing. I mean, this is definitely a significant one, but we still need to take into account, and I think this is something that maybe was not mentioned in this panel, disaster risk reduction in general. It needs to be mainstreamed in our water and agriculture policies, not only for the war. We've seen extreme events. We have seen the impacts on the loss and damage related to floods, droughts, etc. So all these combined factors needs to be taken into consideration while we are operating, while we are setting our plans. Early warning systems, anticipatory action needs to be taken into account. Just one final remark, just regarding also the capacity building, and I think building on what Omar was mentioned as well. I think there are your question, because you were asking how we can try to convey the messages or the technologies to the farmers. There are several ways, and FAO has been leading several what we call farmer field schools, where we go to the farmer and we try to advocate them and to educate them on the best ways to manage their crops, to switch to other crops, etc. And it has been working fantastically, to be honest. But something that we usually don't talk about, we keep talking about the individual capacity building, but we still need to talk about the capacity building for systems, not only for individuals. So for example, for governmental systems, in order to be able to absorb the technology, to change the way that they are working, to switch to a new non-conventional practices that they are not used to. I think capacity building in general needs to be maybe looked at from a different angle, from a different perspective. The individual capacity building is very important, but still it needs to be taken to a different scale, I believe, in order to have proper impact, or maybe the transformation that we are actually looking for on the ground.
Thank you so much. And do any of the other panelists would like to touch upon these topics?
Well, so I think the war in Ukraine has basically shown to different regions of the world how they are exposed when it comes to a specific sector. As I was saying before, energy in Europe, food in the Middle East, at the global level on fertilizers, okay? Because Brazil or Argentina, they do not have a problem in terms of food production, but they do rely on fertilizers coming from. And so I think that it is not that these problems, so water scarcity, or it was not a problem in the MENA region before the war in Ukraine. Sometimes you need a big shock, a big event that makes you realize, okay, that a problem that you have been facing and mismanaging for so long, okay, it is something that you really need to address and solve. And of course, it takes time. You cannot reduce your over-dependence in 2 years. We cannot change suppliers of energy in 3 years. But from these big events, normally you build a different trajectory. Water and water management is very important within, of course, the whole food value chain, which starts, of course, from production, but then you have the logistics, and then you have final consumption, waste, food waste, and so on. I really think that what it needs to be completely redesigned is water management. So this idea of multi-stakeholder engagement, of seeing it from an holistic point of view. And I think that there are some hard choices that must be made. Because, and in particular, one of the biggest is to accept the fact that water is particularly scarce, and when something is scarce, must be allocated in an efficient way. Okay? No possibility of subsidizing everybody, no possibilities of finding ways to give water to everybody. So I'm not saying that you need to set up a market where the ones that bid the most gets the water, but there is the need within a multi-stakeholder framework to come up with efficient solutions for allocating water. And this is unavoidable because, of course, then you have the water accounting, seeing who is just consuming water with respect to those that use water and then give it back to the water body, and who is impacting not just the water but also then the soil. But still, this is something unavoidable. When it is scarce, and it is not that it is scarce just sometimes here, but it is scarce all the time, you need to design a very effective framework of water allocation. Without that, it is very difficult, and with penalties. And for instance, one of the problems that you have in Egypt, for instance, is the fact that in the Delta, you have water used for agriculture, but then you have the textile sector, which is very water intensive and polluting. And again, you cannot have a management that tries to keep everything together. It is not possible. It is, at a certain point, you need to really decide that decisions must be made, decisions that must come with technical information, but that must be implemented at political level, and that must be delivered by the political level. And in order for them to be accepted, they must be decided in a multi-stakeholder environment.
Thank you very much. And now you have basically answered our last question in a way, but I will let my colleague Mohammed take you all through our last segment of the session. And so we're going to talk about what solutions and strategies are governments already implementing. So we talked about what we could do, but we want to know what is actually happening, if there is any knowledge, and how has their progress or success been, and we want some case studies. I'll let Mohammed come in my place and take over. Thank you very much. And then we will have a Q&A with all the participants.
Thank you. So you want to speak, Omar, on this?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know a lot about what is being done in the whole MENA region, but I can also speak about what can be done. And I really like what the previous speaker has mentioned about when something is scarce, it needs to be better allocated, and water is really scarce in the MENA context. And we talk about imports, but what about exports? Have we ever asked ourselves that question? What about, I don't see how food being produced in a water scarce context being exported to other countries being feasible in MENA region particularly. I think the consumers also should play a big role in this. If some products are being produced in a water scarce context, they need to stay in that area, and they shouldn't be used solely for exports. And so that's the first thing I wanted to point out, such as, for example, avocados or nuts or different sorts of crops. So one policy to have in mind and bear in mind is about exports. Something else is obviously capacity building of farmers, of young people, as I mentioned before, and a few other things. But I would let experts answer this question.
Do any of you have comments on this? Also, if you can talk about some barriers that exist for further progress, like why are governments like not taking that much action, or organizations like what barriers are there for progress in this field?
Yeah, well, certainly, I mean, from what we've just discussed, you saw how many topics we brought up. So the issue is certainly complex. I mean, there is not an easy solution for everything, and there are always trade-offs that we need to be taken into account. And what we're trying to do basically, and the governments also are trying to do, is basically to optimize their decisions, I believe, in a way that will ensure that they achieve their food security, and also they consider also the socioeconomic consideration that needs to be taken into account in these decisions. So there are lots of efforts that has been going on. Maybe let me just speak about some of them. From FAO perspective, we have been running several programs in the MENA region. Have a big initiative. It's called the Water Scarcity Initiative. It's actually being developed, implemented in collaboration with the League of Arab States. So all the Arab countries are actually part of this initiative. They have been working. Can you hear me? Yeah, they have been working together on several activities. One of the main activities is the intersectoral collaboration between the Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Water. There have been several ministerial meetings to see how they can enhance the collaboration, the coordination between the water sector and also the agriculture sector, taking into consideration all the other actors. We are also speaking about we haven't maybe touched upon this topic here, but when we speak about inclusive governance, we forgot to speak about the role of the private sector, which also plays a significant role in the process. And I think there were lots of efforts on this regards in the engagement of the private sector in a way that will bring added benefits to the process in several countries. The nexus approach, I believe, and looking at the interlinkages between the water sector, energy sector, and agriculture sector are one of the main topics and activities that have been led by several countries. For example, in Morocco, we saw the use of solar energy in irrigation, and also in Egypt here we have seen also several very good examples. So I think it's not going to be easy to list everything, but certainly on different elements and different perspectives, there are lots of actions being taken into consideration. I think from my point of view, from my humble point of view, the thing that we need to focus on is to work more towards the inclusion of women, the empowerment of young girls in the decision-making process. I think this is an area which I believe in our region is still a bit lacking behind. This needs to be strengthened in different ways, and I'm happy that we have youth representatives, and I can see lots of young faces in the room. So I hope we can bring those faces into the table in the decision-making process, to negotiate, to prioritize their also activities and considerations within the development of the national policies in our countries.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, youth inclusion is something that that's our whole purpose of our organization. You know, that's what we're working on, working with governments, organizations in the MENA region. So Dr. Federico, any final thoughts before we move to our Q&A?
No, so I think that one achievement, at least in some MENA countries, I think, for instance, Jordan, but also Saudi Arabia, is that they are working more and more on wastewater. So what they're doing is that, because this is another, for many other countries, another challenge is that wastewater is a resource, okay? So that on the one hand, it shouldn't go untreated into water bodies and then into the sea. But on the other, it is something that if it is collected and treated, then it can be used from the agricultural sector. And I think that some countries in the region are leading on this, but there is, I would say, room for major improvement. So I think I just wanted to ask, because one of the questions is what they are already doing, and so some of them are already working on wastewater, and this is very important. But I think that as we already said and advocated, water and food in this region require a new governance, which is more participatory and which involves more local communities and stakeholders, of course, including the private sector. But it has to be shaped in a different way. And one of the reforms could be not to have a Ministry of Agriculture separated from the Ministry of Water. Probably you would need something that a minister that is combined rather than different. Yes. So in Morocco there is this.
Yeah, would you like to talk about it, Omar?
No, just a final remark. I think, like, just to finalize my final remarks here, I think the network, MENA Youth Network, and other organizations of youth in MENA should really be encouraged, and then young people should be able to join these networks. But during my presidency in EAS, we have seen a lack of interest generally in the MENA region, and we only had 3 member countries or 4 member countries in the MENA region. And since there is a big audience here from MENA, I would really like to make them reach out to Aya. She's here. She's the Vice President of External Relations of EAS. And if you're interested, you can join a network of EAS, and then together bring in empowerment, and then also other MENA youth join the MENA Youth Network. Really good job you're doing. But coming back to your question, I did not really hear about those initiatives, so maybe you can clear those out to the audience if it's possible.
Okay, yes. So thank you for all of your perspectives. I personally learned a lot. Hope our audience did as well. So now we would like to move to a Q&A section. Does anyone have any questions on anything we discussed? Yes, we can.
Hi, so my question is, I think, mostly to Dr. Federico. As you mentioned, we need more PhD holders in this discipline, and it focuses more on educated people and people knowing what they talk about rather than underskilled people. And what I noticed as a researcher in agriculture as well is that we are working in a field that is very underestimated and very undermined, and people are seeing it as this new trend where everybody is hopping in rather than focusing on the scientists. For example, here at COP, there's a lot of people who are saying that they have nothing to do with climate change or no background, no scientific background, but yet they're here. And this frustrates me a little bit. And I feel that we need to focus more on the scientists and the people knowing within this knowledge, this field. For example, if we address the pandemic the same way that if we address the climate change with the same urgency and highlight the scientists the same way that we address the pandemic, we'd be able to get to a faster solution or move forward within climate change or sustainability in agriculture and so on. So my question is, how do we focus on highlighting the scientists more, or how do we spread within our communities? How do we give more value to people like us rather than make it a discipline that is open to everybody?
That is a trillion probably dollar question, and we could have not even a COP would be enough. I think that there are 2 sides to this coin, and is that one is that sometimes, like, when you focus too much on the global challenge, you risk losing the local aspects, and people perceive that this is something which is far away. Okay. And if you focus too much, I think, on science, okay, and which tells you that you will have certain problems in the future. Okay, again, it's not that you can have many people that do not like science, and the more global and the more you talk about the future, the less they are interested. Okay, so we need to understand in reality how to make this a local problem and how to make it a problem that it is present, that is now, so that people are willing to address it. And this is not a matter of science, okay, but it is a matter of communication and then policy, okay, which is much more important right now, I think, than science. And I wouldn't even say that. So the pandemic, I think it was a global challenge. I wouldn't say that it was well managed, okay? But what you could see is that because a certain part of the world perceived it as a very big threat, immediate, personal. I mean, at the beginning, I'm feeling I might die from this, okay? And it was not in a distant future. It was like rich countries, they invested a lot of money in research. They found their own solution, okay? And they used their own solution for themselves, okay? So, and right now, what you see with the important aspect of it is that it was perceived as an immediate problem that required immediate solution. And so the money was there. The reality with climate change is that it is not perceived as an immediate problem. Maybe you perceive as immediate problems some events, so some extreme weather events, okay? But extreme weather events, they require maybe some adaptation measures rather than mitigation measures. And so the real challenge is how to connect the local and the present with the global and the future. And that, I think, is not a matter of science, it's really a matter of communication and of changing the perspective with which we tell the story, because in the end, the climate change is about scientific fact, but it's also a story. Tell the story of climate change.
Any questions?
I would like to thank you for this open discussion coming from the heart. Especially, I think you understand each other by the eyes. I like this is very, very much. I have idea about we should look for the new novel action or solution for the food security. Look like not working only in agriculture, but we can integrate it two things together. Look like we can integrate it aquaculture. Look like we have something idea I worked before called aquaponic. So aquaponic, this is mean aquaculture, hydroponic. So when we integrate it together, we can solve a lot of a problem. Look like we recycling the water. We come up with a nutrient controlling or change the ammonia to nitrat. So we can do something like that for in a small scale, but this is can encourage bigger scale. So we would like to looking for something like that, to going down to make something bigger, to integrate it, two things together like rice with fish, aquaculture with invertebrates. So we'd like to look for new idea, new novel, and also to share idea between the countries. Look like when we have in this country succeeded case study, we can transport it to the other. And for that, we don't need limitation between the country. If we know limitation and science and knowledge can sharing, this is very good. So for my understanding, we have three solutions. First of all, advanced education, responsibility, who is responsible for what, and after that, the action. Action should become public awareness and scientific education. Look like doing a lot of research about what we have. For something is good and something for the environment look like mangrove. We should increase the cultivation of mangrove in our countries because mangrove playing a lot of things for the nutrient recycling. I am sorry for this for times and thank you very much.
Is there any response? Anyone want to say anything about this? No?
Well, I think it's more of a comment, but I fully agree. I mean, the food security in general includes different applications and different sectors. I mean, within FAO, we have the fisheries, we have departments related to the livestock. So, I mean, nutrition. I mean, there are different elements that needs to be taken into account. I think the discussion was mainly focused on water because some of our panelists here were like also water experts, so we diverted into water, but I fully agree with him. There are lots of innovation is part of the solution as well, so we really need to look at different practices.
Yes, thank you. One more question there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ayan. I'm from Morocco. So I've studied food security, and I believe that in the MENA region, we will face a very difficult food insecurity because of water scarcity, because our region is very vulnerable to water scarcity. So we really need to urge our governments to have a good water management plan. Otherwise, we will suffer from it. And I think that we, as a MENA region, we underestimate ourselves. We always look for foreigners to come and do the research on our land, on our countries. We should do it by ourselves. We have the knowledge, the science, the capacity to do it. So we don't need other people to come here to do it for us and give us the solutions. And we should not adopt the solutions given by the global north where the conditions are different. So we cannot adopt and implement many things they are talking about to save the climate. We should come up with our own ideas and unions because we know best our lands and our countries. And for the same comments as my dear colleague, I see that many people are here with urging to have a party or party overflow badge to come at COP for their LinkedIn, for their personal development, for their careers. This is nice. I wish the best for everyone. But I think this field is for people who really care about the climate and are in a very specific field and are activists and they urge to do something, to change something. So I see that some observers have more impact than parties that are here, that are just flying everywhere. And like we don't know, not everyone knows about such events and such options because our academic lifestyle is based on a national plan. We just know about the national events happening, but in the global north, for example, professors, they encourage their students to go to such events, to bring the report, and they would count it as a field activity or as like an internship thing if you do it abroad or if you go to such events. But I see that we are a new generation ready to connect with each other and we want to change things in our region. So this is a push to keep working together and to change what we've been told before by the old generations. And joining the MENA Youth Network, even if we're old, young, even the old people can give output and ideas and advice, and the young people should be the change makers. And this was just a comment. Thank you.
I think this also was a comment, but
Okay, so I think. Oh.
I absolutely agree on the fact that there is competence, skill, and that there is no need to have people that come and tell you what to do. At the same time, what I want to say is that it is like overdependence, okay? So you don't have to overdepend in general, okay? But you don't even have to think that what you have, your talent, your skills, are enough in the sense that confrontation, discussion with the rest of the world can always provide you with feedback, okay? So on the one hand, say, no, I don't need someone to come and dictate me what to do, but just to know that you don't have to completely flip the coin saying that I don't want to talk with anybody. Okay, so no, just because sometimes someone is over stating this, no, that we know better, we know, yes, but you know better your Morocco, you know definitely better Morocco than me. And I don't want to say that. And you know the local environment, the traditional technologies, and at the same time, experiences that you might hear about, that you might study, and people coming and visiting and suggesting ideas. Okay, so the problem is not like is confrontation with others is always important. The real issue is whether we are at the same level or not. But once we accept that we are at the same level, then it is very important to also see what others are doing, and maybe inviting them to see whether they can come up with some ideas once they know. So not they come with the solution, but that they come with their bag of knowledge and see whether if they stay here, they can use it along with my bag of knowledge to come up with innovative solution once I study, once I know what I'm talking about. Because one of the problems that we have experienced, for instance, with the development aid is that people were not coming somewhere as experts, but they were coming already with the solutions, okay, without knowing, okay, and without the will to study, okay, the situation on the ground. But I want to strike this balance, because I don't want to go from over independence to autarky, because autarky is never the answer.
Just one quick question.
Just following on what Aya said, I'd love to hear Dr. Hiba's thoughts on this. So what I believe that you've mentioned, we always talk about women's inclusion, youth inclusion, marginalized communities, and I feel basically as youth, I feel included, but I don't feel integrated. And I feel like nowadays we're always tokenizing youth, women, LGBTQ communities, and it's just being tokenized. They're being included with no added value from these groups to these organizations, and no actual value being received to us. Like we get exposure and that's it. And I believe that we need to be further integrated. So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, let me just maybe do a quick comment on the first question, and then I will address your question. First, just from my experience, I've been working on different regions and also on regional projects, on a national projects, and now we are trying. I'm handling the interregional technical platform for FAO. So the sharing of knowledge between different countries is very important, and the sharing of knowledge between different regions proved to be with a very high added value. So I agree with what my colleague here just mentioned. I think you don't need anybody to come and tell you exactly how you need to run your own resources, but you certainly need to look at what other people are doing. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes the solutions are there. You just need to pick it, and you need to customize it a little bit. But certainly there are lots of added value. But at the same time, empowering your own community and your own scientists is something that I don't think anybody would disagree on. Now, I just coming back to your points, I believe we have been always hearing about several initiatives on the inclusion, etc. I think what we have been seeing here, or what have you been feeling, is basically the normal trend of change. Change does not come in one day, it comes over several years. So first we speak about the advocacy, the importance of a certain topic, and then people start getting convinced, but at the same time it's not properly applied, but we will get there somewhere. So we need to keep talking about it, and I hope we would be able to integrate it properly in our policies and within our governments and to decision-making process. Just one final remark, the Interregional Technical Platform for Water Scarcity for FAO actually opens this type of opportunities. This platform is not just for FAO, it's for any actor sector of play within the water sector, agriculture sector. We open the floor for different youth communities, civil society, private sector to be engaged within the platform, and it's interregional. So it's not only the MENA region. You can also actually participate from different regions. So maybe this could be also a gateway to the proper participation and inclusion. We would like to hear from you on your needs and how your thoughts can be applied within the policy of this platform. And I hope we can all get there together. Yani it's one of my objectives. I always been talking about it. Thank you.
Okay, so we are at the end of our session now. Just want to give a thank you to everyone who made this happen. We had the organizers at the Food for Clan Pavilion, our board on the MENA Youth Network, including Mohammed here, one of our co-founders. Also to our three guests who accepted to be here and shared us all their experiences and perspectives. And a quick note, if you want to join the MENA Youth Network, you can talk to one of us. You can follow us on Instagram if you search MENA Youth Network there. And yeah, so can we get a round of applause for our guests? And thank you for coming.